Welcome to SEC Sports Talk with John McEachin, and we are back again after another great weekend of college football, especially in the SEC. We are here at Moe's Barbecue in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Alabama, silenced the critics, took down Mississippi State 25-20. I actually have on my notes here 25-0. That's not right. Georgia also stomps Auburn 34-7 in Athens. Will Muschamp from Florida is fired after a 23-20 loss to South Carolina. Ironically, to Steve Spurrier, the old ball coach from Florida. Was it head ball coach or old ball coach? What do they call him now? I mean, it's switched up.
Both. They
call it both?
Old ball coach and head ball coach, so he goes by both.
What do they go by now?
They call him the old ball coach now.
Old ball, okay. I always get confused on that. Phyllis from Mulga, later on, you don't want to miss this. Phyllis from Mulga, famous Paul Finebaum caller. She will join the show. We interviewed her yesterday. Halfway through the show, about 30 minutes in, 25 minutes in, we'll have her join us.
Did she yell at you?
She was really nice. She was really nice to me. I got to tell you, I'm a big Phyllis fan. I think she's wonderful. And a lot of the reason, I'll get into this more later, but a lot of the reason I did this interview is to kind of show a different side of her than people really know about and hear on the radio. So anyway, she's a wonderful person. She really is. Now, who is the number one team in the nation, okay? Alabama, in my opinion, should be ahead of Florida State. Hands down. Florida State has beaten nobody. Absolutely nobody this year. They've beaten Notre Dame. I'm not even sure. Are they ranked? I'm not even sure they're ranked anymore. Okay, if they are ranked, that's the only ranked team they've beaten.
They're in the low 20s now.
They have to be.
They've drifted way down.
And here's the other thing. Mississippi State should be in the top 4. But Alabama should pass Florida State tomorrow night in the college football rankings. Alabama should be number 1. Now, after beating the former number 1 team in the nation, Mississippi State, how does Alabama win this game? They stop Prescott's run. Oh, and by the way, the other quarterback, Blake Sims, for Alabama, he won it on his feet. Clutch plays on third down on his feet. Forced 3 turnovers, also on Prescott's interceptions. Prescott threw 2 INTs in the end zone, okay, or in the red zone. And by the way, all these people, was that the correct? The referees botched that call, the fumble. Look, referring to Derrick Henry's fumble in the end zone that was overturned and called a touchdown, that was the correct call. In my opinion, that was the correct call. I don't know if there was an exact angle where you could see the ball crossing the goal line, but you could tell from every angle that he was the ball was over the line. There wasn't a straight on view, but they got the call right. And that's what you're there to do. You're there to get the call right. Forget this indisputable evidence crap. Now, Mississippi State, they did outgain Alabama 428 to 335. I'll say that. And it was just 2 great teams going at it. 2 great teams going at it. Number 1 versus number 5. Obviously, that'll change. But what's interesting is Dan Mullen, he also did not manage the clock very well at the end of the game. He kind of pulled a Les Miles there. But did not use his timeouts early on. And by the time they got down there and were going to kick an onside kick, they had about 10 seconds left to go in the game. So let's talk about how Florida State compares to Alabama. Florida State, once again, is down 23-7? So they're down by 16 points. And once again, they come back and win. That's pretty impressive. Except for Miami's not that great. And none of the other teams that they've come back on have been that great. And so Florida State hasn't lost. I'll give them that. But there's 6 games that they should have lost, and to opponents that are not even ranked, except for Notre Dame. They were very lucky to beat Notre Dame because of the pass interference call on offense. But look, Alabama, number 1 team in the country, Florida State and Jameis Winston, they're going to get exposed in the playoff. Florida State, I'm sorry, people, they're going to make the playoff, but they will get exposed. There's just no doubt about that in my mind. Auburn, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, IMO would wipe the floor with Florida State. Okay? They'd get down at halftime like they have against these mediocre football teams, and they would stay down for the rest of the game. It was really tough in Athens for Auburn. That was rough. And truth is, Auburn, they look terrible. There's no other way to put it. They didn't even have 300 yards of offense. And for the offense that they have had all year, running the ball down people's throats, that fast-paced, triple option, you need 450 to 500 yards at least. And they're going downhill, in my opinion. On the other side, you had Nick Chubb for Georgia, 144 yards. Todd Gurley had 138 yards. Georgia ran for 289 yards. We're talking about just on the ground. That's about as much offense as Auburn had total. But here's the thing. You had to kind of know this was coming. I didn't last week. I predicted Auburn to win 38-34. Now, I was right about the 34. Georgia got 34. Auburn got 7. Thank you, Auburn, for making me look great. This does help Ole Miss, though. Ole Miss needed that. But again, this was a revenge game. You saw what happened last year. Auburn wins on a 4th and 18 play. Lucky play. And you just don't win games like that 2 years in a row. And that's why I don't think they're going to beat Alabama. I think Alabama I think they're just going to flat out beat Auburn. Auburn is spiraling down, and I think it started with the Ole Miss game. They were very lucky to beat Ole Miss. They went into Texas A&M went into Auburn, and Texas A&M pulled the big upset. Auburn's defense doesn't show up, especially in the first half. They did in the second half. But Auburn blew the game, and now they show up to Georgia, and they had nothing. Absolutely nothing. I don't see how Auburn wins the Iron Bowl at this point. Now, let's real quick go over the scenarios. Alabama has to they have to win out to get to the championship game. That simple. For Ole Miss to win it, Alabama has to lose to Auburn. Ole Miss has to win out. For Mississippi State to get in, Alabama has to lose to Auburn. And Auburn is out. Auburn's done. No hope for them. Ty, what do you think?
Like at this point, it's the SEC is going to be lucky to get one team in. And Alabama controls their own destiny. And like you said, Auburn, they have had the luck of the proverbial Irish, and it finally ran out. I mean, they've had a 2-year streak of where they've won some unbelievable games.
And don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed the Auburn luck streak. It's been fun. I had a great time with it last year.
It was very entertaining.
They've been the luckiest team in the past 2 years.
Without a doubt. And you look at the way that the teams have progressed, and you made a great point. Auburn's regressing. Alabama's progressing. Auburn's defense, they're giving up more and more yards. And unfortunately for Georgia, they lost Gurley to an ACL. Comes back one game, has an outstanding game, and then he's done again. But that's Gurley's MO, is it not?
Yeah.
A great player, but never able to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So you look at how it sets up for Alabama. They're going to beat an Auburn team that's really struggling to find, their identity on defense. So that opens up something really intriguing. It's Will Muschamp, who was a coach defensive coordinator at Auburn, 2006 and 7. Does he become a prime candidate to be the new defensive coordinator at Auburn? But in the interim, Alabama's positioned themselves really well. Blake Sims, very confident. Like you said, he took command of the game. That's 2 games in a row he's taken command and has been able to lead Alabama down the field, make plays not only with his arm, but with his legs. So he's shown that he's capable of making the progressions. He's also able to take the ball and run with it and make the plays necessary to put them in a position to win. So from that perspective, I think you're right. Alabama is going to take the next step. In Georgia, they're only going to have a one-headed beast versus a two-headed beast. And I don't think Mason can beat Alabama one-on-one in the passing game. They just don't have
well, and keep in mind, Georgia needs a little help from Tennessee this weekend. Missouri goes into Knoxville. Missouri does have to lose one more game, and they were able to get over that test at Texas A&M. We'll talk about Will Muschamp's firing from Florida on the next segment. Don't forget, we've got Phyllis from Mulga coming on later. We're going to show you a different side of her. We'll be right back. Welcome back to SEC Sports Talk with John McEachin. Interesting first segment we had there. Ty, what you got for us?
Well, again, tonight we're at Moe's Original Barbecue. Now, keep in mind, Moe's Original Barbecue with locations in Vestavia, Hoover, Lakeshore, and Trussville. Moe's Original Barbecue offers a Southern soul food revival. Moe's award-winning Alabama-style barbecue offerings include pulled pork, ribs, wings, chicken, and turkey, in addition to Southern fried catfish and a shrimp sandwich, not to mention an array of down-home side dishes and desserts, freshly prepared. If you want to unwind after a long day or watch a game, Moe's Original Barbecue has bars and plenty of HD TVs. Don't want to cook? Heading to a game? Moe's Original Barbecue has haul-at-home wing trays and tailgate packs. Also, catering is available for corporate lunches, weddings, reunions, and parties, and special events. Moe's Original Barbecue also is family-friendly, with lots of choices for the little ones on the kids' menu. So stop by at one of the 4 Moe's Original Barbecue locations in Vestavia, Hoover, Lakeshore, or Trussville for fresh from the pit Alabama-style barbecue. For more information, daily specials and events, visit www.moesoriginalbarbecue.com. Be sure to look for Moe's Original Barbecue on Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, there you go. I hope they also serve crow, because I'm going to have to order me some of that after last week's picks. Yeah, I picked Mississippi State to beat Alabama. I changed my pick during the week. I originally picked Alabama to win 23-20, and then I changed it to Mississippi State. Yeah, I was wrong. I was also wrong about Auburn. I did get the Arkansas LSU game right, though. Picked Arkansas 21-19. I was wrong about... Well, I got Tennessee right, too. I was wrong about pretty much everything else.
But you were so close on the score, 23-20.
I was close. Original pick, yeah. Actually, let's see. 1, 2, 3. I was 3-3. That's not too bad. I can get half a crow there. All right, let's go over our SEC scores of the week. We got football and basketball. Well, let's start off with football scores first. South Carolina, a comeback win, fourth quarter comeback win, wins in overtime 23-20. That was the dagger for Will Muschamp, caused by Steve Spurrier, former coach of Florida. Alabama wins the game 25-20 over Mississippi State in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Tennessee, one win away from bowl eligibility, takes down Kentucky 50-16 in Knoxville. They play Vanderbilt. Well, they play Missouri. Then they play Vanderbilt. They're going to beat Vanderbilt, so they'll go 6-6 at least. Georgia takes on Auburn at home, and Georgia gets the victory 34-7. Missouri goes into College Station and beats Texas A&M 34-27. I was surprised by that. Arkansas, and this is their first SEC win in 17 games. Is that right?
17 tries. 17 nothing.
There you go. And they won 17-0 over the LSU Tigers. LSU has fallen to 7-4. Arkansas is also one win away from bowl eligibility. Let's move on to basketball. Opening weekend for everybody in the SEC. Florida beats William & Mary 68-45. Tennessee loses to VCU 85-69. Mississippi State beats Western Carolina 66-56. Georgia Tech beats Georgia 80-73. South Carolina beats North Florida 81-56. Charleston Southern beats Ole Miss in Oxford 66-65.
Ouch.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's a great way to start your season, right? Kentucky over Grand Canyon. That's a school? Really? Anyway, 85-45. Kentucky. Texas A&M over Northwestern State 109-68. Missouri beats UMKC. Excuse me. Missouri loses to UMKC. I don't even know who UMKC is. I'm just reading this. 69-61. Alabama beats Towson 82-54. And Auburn, with Bruce Pearl in his opening game, wins 83-73 over Milwaukee. Also, some games for... Actually, Kentucky played their second game, and they win 71-52 over Buffalo. Vanderbilt opened up the season winning over Trevecca 83-56. Arkansas beats Alabama State 97-79. And Missouri plays their second game of the year, and they win 56-41 over Valparaiso. Those are your SEC scores of the week. All right, well, very unfortunate for Will Muschamp. His stint at Florida ended after 4 years. He's got a buyout of $6 million over the next 3 years, so he's not going broke. And I'll say this. I'm sorry that he got fired. I don't feel sorry for a coach who gets fired who's getting paid $6 million to do nothing over the next 3 years. As much as I feel sorry for, the coal miner that gets fired and has nowhere else to go. But, at the same time, he was doing something he loved, and he's not able to do that anymore. But he'll get a job as a defensive coordinator. He'll be the hottest topic. But here's the there were just some things that did not go his way at Florida. I don't think he's a bad coach, but he couldn't develop a QB. Jeff Driscoll was terrible. He really, his first year he was okay, but this year, awful. Good defense, no offense. That's been Will Muschamp Sr. at Florida. Ranked 88th in the country in total offense. That's not good. In the Mizzou game, if there was anything telling about Florida's season this year, Missouri goes into Florida and wins, 42-14 or 42-13, okay? And Missouri gains, 120 yards of total offense. And yet they score 42 points. Why? Their offense, Florida's offense, was awful. There were special teams. There were 2 or 3 pick sixes. The announcers were sitting there saying, is this really happening? This is awful.
The same thing with the Alabama game. And then, you had that situation where just so many yards were given up. Not yards given up, but points given up. You had the offense that was just, as you said, Muschamp never could develop an offense. And one of the situations where it bit him eventually. And he couldn't develop a quarterback. And he went through, 2 offensive coordinators, and it just was never a right fit. He's a coordinator, and there are some guys that are made to be coordinators.
You're absolutely – I mean, some people are made to be coordinators, and there are other people who are made to be head coaches. It's a different job. Sometimes a coordinator turns into a head coach, but just because you're a good offensive coordinator, a good defensive coordinator, that doesn't mean that you're going to be a good head coach. It just doesn't. And the writing on the wall was the old ball coach beats his old team at home with a bad team. South Carolina's not good. They're not. I mean, they've been awful this year. The only game that was really even that great for them was losing to Auburn 42-35 on the road. But once again, for the second time, you've had 2 offensive linemen blocking each other. Yeah, remember last year against Georgia Southern? This was in the not top 10. This was number 1 in the not top 10 for about 3 or 4 months. 2 offensive linemen blocking each other. And then you think that's never going to happen again. Oh, it happened again. And sometimes you can just tell the writing is on the wall. It's not going to work out. I don't want to say I believe in signs, in the sky, but sometimes certain things happen where you just know it's not working and you got to move on. I'm going to go ahead, though, and I'm going to predict Florida to beat Florida State at the end of the season. Now, remember, I've been talking about how Florida State is just not as good as people think they are. Actually, I don't even think a lot of people think they're that good, but they're undefeated. And Florida State at some point has got to get exposed, and I think Florida's going to possibly do that. I'm going to say that Florida's going to go into Florida State just like Ron Zook. When he got fired right before Urban Meyer, he goes into Florida State and wins in Tallahassee. I'm going to go ahead and predict that. Now, where does Florida go after this? I don't think they hire a coordinator, but let's go ahead with the Vegas odds right here. The Vegas odds say Mike Gundy from Oklahoma State, 4-1 odds. He's the top dog in this hunt right now. Jim McElwain from Colorado State, 9-2. Bob Stoops from Oklahoma, 11-2, and then Dan Mullen from Mississippi State, also at 11-2. Do you think maybe David Cutcliffe, do you think he makes that move? Or is he just happy at Duke?
He's happy at Duke, and the spotlight. I mean, I think he is content where he's at. And then there's a dark horse candidate. There's an old Florida guy that's done very well Division II, and a lot of alumni are really intrigued about trying to get him back, and it's Kerwin Bell.
Ah, interesting. I have not thought of that. We will be right back. We'll talk a little bit more about some more games. LSU losing to Arkansas, and UT is about to go to a bowl game, y'all. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's pretty obvious. They're going to play Vanderbilt, and we all know how those games go with Vanderbilt this year. Not too well for Vandy. Well, we're live at Moe's Original Barbecue in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Got to get some Moe's Barbecue. It's delicious. I had some last week, and I chowed down. Y'all, we have Phyllis from Mulga coming up in just a few minutes. You don't want to miss that, so stay tuned. We will be right back. We're back. People at Moe's are looking at me like, what in the world is this guy doing over here? Doing my arm up and down like I'm in the club. You know what I mean? Ty, what you got for us over here?
Well, no SEC sports score updates, but again, we are live at Moe's Original Barbecue. We're at the Vestavia Hills location. And folks, if you want a Southern soul food revival, whether it's for the holidays or for any day, then you need to get to one of the Moe's original locations. Whether you want side dishes that your mama used to make, or you want good old-fashioned barbecue, you need to go to the Vestavia, Hoover, Lakeview, or Trussville, Moe's Original Barbecue locations for award-winning Alabama-style barbecue. That's Moe's Original Barbecue, our main sponsor for SEC Sports Talk with John McEachin. Back to John.
Thank you, Ty. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'm so hungry right now. I'm ready to chow down on one of these barbecue sandwiches. Yeah, I love Moe's. They give us free food. How about that? I cannot figure this team out. LSU. I mean, you think they've turned the corner, and I understand they had a big game against that. They really should have beaten Alabama last week, and it's a letdown game. They got to go to Arkansas. Arkansas's improving, but they lay an egg, and getting beat 17-0. They didn't even score anything. They didn't score a point, and so I mean, look at the stats here. 123 yards of total offense. Are you kidding me? That's awful. I mean, Anthony Jennings, 12 of 22 for 87 yards, not even triple digits. On the other side, I mean, it wasn't like Arkansas just tore down the house when it comes to offensive yards, but 264 offensive yards. Brandon Allen was good enough, 16 of 27, 169 yards. Arkansas, to their credit, they're getting better and better, and Ole Miss plays them next week, and they should be worried. It's on the road. Ole Miss should be very worried about Arkansas. Arkansas is a team. They're like Tennessee. They're like Tennessee in the fact that next year they're going to be really good. Tennessee is in the same way. They've been on the brink. They're young, but they have a fairly new coach in the second year. But it's going to happen, and next year both of these teams are going to be really, really scary to play. Now, Arkansas was overdue to win. 17 games, they haven't won in the SEC. They finally get it, okay? They were overdue. LSU was, just unfortunate for them. UT, they're going to a bowl. They're going to do it. I think they're going to beat Missouri next week. I really do. They're going to go 7-5 and possibly win their bowl game. They could possibly win 8 games this year, Ty. They could possibly win 8 games. They're going to win out. Joshua Dobbs is the real deal. He's a superstar in the waiting. Greg McElroy said the same thing. He's a superstar, and he's going to be great.
It just shows you what kind of coach is Butch Jones for not having this guy in there earlier. I mean, that cost them the Florida win. They had no business losing that game. So
you do have to wonder that.
Yeah. So in spite of Butch Jones, Tennessee could win potentially 8 games. And there's actually rumblings. A lot of Tennessee folks are not that infatuated with Butch Jones. He comes across a little bit insincere, and a lot of diehard old alumni are not fans.
Interesting. I'm a big fan. I like what he's done with the program. He's taken a program that Derek Dooley buried in the ground. I mean, let's be real. Derek Dooley did a very poor job at Tennessee, and he's made them competitive again. And he's had not very much to work. He's got a lot of speed, but they're all young. And he had an inexperienced offensive line this year and defensive line. None of them on either side of the ball had started. And so that's what I like about Butch Jones and what he has done this year and what he's been able to accomplish. And I think even 6-6, if they can make it to a bowl game, that's an accomplishment. And they're on the right path. They're going in the right direction. They're going to win a lot of games under him in the future. We are at Moe's Original Barbecue in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Phyllis from Mulga will join us next. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the show. This is so good. I got a turkey sandwich here at Moe's. Man, I can't do this. Ty, you take it.
Everybody's hunkering down on some barbecue. We were wondering why they ran out of barbecue tonight and had such a packed house.
Yeah, I ate it all.
Well, it was actually a big fundraiser they had tonight for junior diabetes, and really excited. We were able to find out a little bit more about it. We've got Elizabeth Bindall with us, and an intriguing little bit. Elizabeth's father does color for the NFHS network for the Vestavia Hills football game. So we've got a little NFHS network combination. We've got myself, who does the game of the week with Jerry Young, the voice of high school football in Alabama. And with us now, we've got Elizabeth to tell us a little bit about herself and about the fundraiser tonight. So, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about tonight. How did things go this evening?
It was really awesome. I think that there was about 400 people that showed up, and the line was out the door constantly, and I thought it was just a really awesome and amazing experience.
I thought they were here for us, so, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know if you knew this, but they ran out of food.
I did. I heard them say that. It was awesome.
Ribs, chicken. The only thing they had left, Eric was like, well, we got to get them something to eat. Is there turkey back there? So you guys had done a wonderful job. Well, tell us about juvenile diabetes, actually.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I was diagnosed on August 28, 2014, and when I found out, I was very shocked. But I knew that I could, if I just stayed strong and, just stayed strong, that I could get through it. So I had to go through 6 weeks of doing whatever a type 1 diabetic had to do, having daily insulin shots, and had to check my blood sugar like 6 times a day. Sometimes I even had to wake up at 2 in the morning to check my blood sugar, so that was a little hard. But
that's a big change.
It is. It was a really big change. I had to change everything that I ate, and I had to change, I had to get a lot healthier with everything that I had. So it was a big change.
Well, that's great, but you've been able to grow from that, and it's made you appreciate just how important it is to focus on health, which a lot of people just take for granted. So
right.
It really was an eye-opener for you. So tell us a little bit more about tonight. So you guys had over 400 people here tonight.
Yeah, I met a lot of type 1 diabetics that I did not even know that they were type 1. And actually these 2 men came up to me and they showed me their insulin pump. And I thought that was really cool that they were just willing to put themselves out there and show, hey, I'm a diabetic. And so we had something in common.
Well, you're now part of a family, so to speak.
Right.
So now yourself, do you have to have a pump, or are you just, how is your diabetes? Is it maintained now?
Right. I have a rare form of diabetes called MODY2, and all I have to do is control it with diet and exercise. So I do not have to have a pump, or I do not have to take insulin injections. So yeah, I was really blessed to have this. But I've been through what every type 1 has to go through, so I know how hard it is on a daily basis what you have to do, but I know that every diabetic is strong out there.
Well, this was wonderful. So what inspired you to do this fundraiser tonight and put all this together?
Yeah, I just, since I know what they go through, I think, they're about to find a cure for this at UAB, and so I just wanted to donate some money for them so they could, have that for their research and just, yeah.
Well, that is outstanding. We sincerely thank you for what you're doing, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you too.
Thank you for your time. Elizabeth, have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And we look forward to hearing your dad on the air as he does his NFHS Game of the Week for Vestavia Hills moving forward. So,
all right.
Y'all take care.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Good luck
Thank you.
to you. And if you want to learn more about juvenile diabetes, you can go to the website www.jdrf.org. We appreciate Elizabeth Bindall talking with us. And now we have got Phyllis from Mulga, famous Paul Finebaum caller, on in just a minute. Here is a clip of her from last week on the Paul Finebaum show giving her opinion on the playoff committee.
Answer me the question. When is Bama going to get some respect? When they kill somebody on the field? Good grief. What do you think you're doing? You're not even looking at what's the best and what works the hardest. Give Bama some credit and quit saying we've not beat anybody. Do you think LSU was a nobody team? LSU was far from a nobody team. That was hard in Death Valley. And any other team would say the same thing if they were at night in Death Valley. I just don't understand it. I disagree. I think Alabama was just dumped on. Just absolutely dumped on and passed down the road. And if they beat Mississippi State, they're going to put Baylor in Alabama's place, and then they're going to say, well, Alabama really didn't beat anybody. All they did was beat Mississippi State, the number one freaking team in the country. Get a grip, committee. Paul, all I can say is, Roll Tide!
And now we're going to try to show you a different side of Phyllis. Here is the interview I did with her yesterday. I hope you all enjoy. All right, well, Phyllis, thank you for being on the show. First of all, Phyllis, let me ask you, what did you think of the Mississippi State-Alabama game yesterday?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it was a scary game. It came down almost to the wire. I mean, with the comeback they were making, and I was afraid that they were going to make a stronger comeback than that, and maybe go past us and win the game. It really came down to the last part of the game before I could relax. Until those last few minutes, I was not relaxed during the entire game. It was a hard-fought game. I mean, I've got to give props to Mississippi State. They were a tough team to beat, but then again, they were number one in the country as well.
Phyllis, let's go back to your early childhood. I guess this is where it started. How long have you been an Alabama fan?
Since I was about 4 years old.
Wow. So where does all the passion come from?
My dad. My dad was he was a huge fan of Coach Bear Bryant, and Coach Bryant's name was just a household name to us. I mean, we were all little kids, myself and my 5 brothers. I didn't have any sisters, and I'd sit on Daddy's knee in the 60s, and he would turn on this big old radio. It was a piece of furniture, basically, and he'd turn it on and sit me on his knee, and my brothers would sit around it like kids at Christmas time, and we would listen to the majority of the Alabama games back then. We had to listen to them. We had a TV, but, they were on TV very sparse. And we would just sit around there and just hoop and holler and just carry on for the Tide. And it was just embedded in me. I mean, all 5 of my brothers to this day are staunch Alabama fans and never have been anything any different, never wanted to be, nor I. And I think it was the tradition, the Bear Bryant tradition, and all the tradition that's come through the years that Bama has given this state something to be proud of. And I look up to them for that. That's just one thing. But I take pride because, Alabama back then, they were down. I mean, things were hurting. This city was hurting. This state was hurting. But we had Alabama football to listen to and to take our minds off all the horrible things that was going on here in this state. And it just gave us something to be proud of when we didn't have very much at that time.
When you talk about the horrible things that were going on, what are you referring to?
I'm talking about the racism. I'm talking about the days of Birmingham. I lived in western Birmingham when all that was happening, and like the hoses and things like that. I was only about 11 years old, but I remember that affecting me. I mean, it just broke my heart. The bombing, that church bombing. I went to my daddy, and those little girls was about my age, and I told him, I said, "Why would somebody do that, Daddy?" And he would tell me, because of the color of their skin, Phyllis. And I'm going to tell you something. I better not ever see you or one of my sons ever being unkind to anyone because of the color of their skin. You'll get my belt on your back end if you do. And he meant it. He raised us not to be that way. He raised us not to be racist. And I'm glad he did, because it's what Birmingham is mostly known of in the other states, like the northern states and things like that. Birmingham has come so far. The state has come so far, but it was things like that that hurt me. That put a impression on me, and that was when I felt like, I was for the underdog, and I felt like that's what was happening to the black people. I felt like they were being done so wrong, but me as a child, I couldn't do anything about it. And then when the church bombing happened, that just broke all of our hearts, and we just, back then, you had to keep your mouth shut, and I didn't like that. I didn't like to be shut up when I had something to say. So I got in trouble a lot of times, but I didn't care. I went there anyway. If I saw someone mistreating someone, I told them what I thought of them, and I'd try to fight them, because that's what I believed in. I just didn't believe in that.
Wow. Let me ask you something, Phyllis. Do you support any other Alabama sports or any other high school teams or pro teams?
Oh Lord, yeah, the gymnastics, of course the basketball, but none of it is as deep rooted as the football, as Alabama football is. But yes, I support all of the athleticism and degrees of athletics at Alabama that they're in. I support them. I buy the memorabilia, and I've not here recently, but I've bought tickets to the games, and I've always participated, and tried to put my part back into what they were giving to me, and what they were giving to me was a fun time and memories and pride, and that's what I felt from the time I was a little bitty girl.
Any pro teams?
Yes, I like the Packers. I like the Green Bay Packers. I really do.
Well, they were destroying, who was it, Philadelphia a few minutes ago?
Yes. Well, I didn't say that because they're good right now, and I like the New Orleans Saints. I like them. I've always been kind of partial to those two teams, and maybe it's because I have cousins that are huge Packer fans, and they were raised in the North and everything, and they were all huge fans of the Green Bay Packers, and I think I just followed suit with them. When they came down here, they got Alabama. If we went up there to visit them, we got the Packers.
Wow. Well, Phyllis, let me ask you something. How have you handled, obviously you've gotten national fame, and it's come pretty fast. How have you handled that fame of calling into the Paul Finebaum show?
John, I'm telling you, I told Paul in the beginning, well, I've talked and told people that it was scary. It was scary. I've never been in the public like this before. I've always kind of been a private person to myself, and
right.
But I loved the fact that I could get on the radio and voice my opinion, and I was comfortable with that. But I'm overwhelmed. I'm humbled. I swear to you, I'm absolutely humbled and overwhelmed, because it's like you said, it's coming so fast, and I don't know what to do with myself, John. But I can tell you this: I will never, ever be anyone but me. I will never be anyone but myself. And if I'm not accepted as myself, then I don't want to be accepted. That's just the way I am. And yes, it's overwhelmed. That's the only word I know to say. And it's, I just don't understand it. I don't know what I have done to get people to follow me like they have. I don't know. And I just keep on being me, and that's all I'm going to be. And I don't know why all of this has blown up because of me being me, but that's all I know to tell you, John. I've never, like I said, I've never wanted to be anything but me. Nobody special, and I'm not anybody special, and I never will. I never will be. I'm just me. I'm just Phyllis.
Well, do you enjoy the fame just a little bit?
I'm telling you, it's scary. It really is. It's scary because when I get on Twitter, I hardly ever get to read a lot of posts because the tweets I do read, I'm constantly, tweeting back to them, and I enjoy that. I try to follow everybody that follows me and answer back, and I enjoy that. But it does get overwhelming. Again, there's my word. But no. I can't believe it, to be honest with you. I can't believe the swell that all of this has come to fruition. It's hard to believe, and I'm just kind of stunned by it. And it's not that I don't appreciate it. It's not that at all. But I am humbled by it. And that's another way my mother and daddy raised us. They raised us to be humble and to treat others the way we want to be treated. And that's exactly the way I am, unless I have a problem with you, like,
right.
My favorite sport, football. And, of course, it turns out to be Alabama football.
Well, let me ask you this, Phyllis. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
A lot of people want to know, when you call in, is it, at least these days, is it more of an act, or are you calling in because you have something that you want to say?
Let me tell you something. When I call a radio station today, I call when I get angry. I listen intently, and if anything is said or done, and I read it or hear it on the radio, I have an opinion about it, I call the radio, and you can bet I'm just as mad as I sound. I can't script a thing. I'm not smart enough to get on a radio station and read from a script. I'm just not that smart. I'm too dumb for that. But when I call, I have it inside of me, and it comes out, and what I say, whatever it is I say, I said it, and it's done, and there's no taking it back. But I do get a release from it. I feel better. After I vent, I can relax, and I do feel better.
Phyllis, let's go back to when you first started calling in. How long have you been calling into the Paul Finebaum show?
Since the early 90s, around 93.
So what prompted you to call into his show for the first time?
Coach Stallings was being disrespected, and bad things were being said about him, and he had just been at Bama a couple of years, and it was brought up about he lost the first 3 games, and if he didn't get through that season, they were talking about, calling for his head, and I really thought the ever-loving world of Coach Stallings and his family. And when I heard that, I asked my husband, I said, "Who's that on the radio?" And he told me, and I said, "Have you got the number?" He said, "No, but in a minute they'll give it out." They gave the number out, and I come back in there, and he said, "Here's the number." So I called him, and I just point blank asked him, I said, "Why are you saying these things about Coach Stallings?" And he just bluntly, basically was saying about the same thing. And when he did, I just went into a rage, and I chewed him out and spit him up. And I didn't call after that. And 2 months later, I find out that people start telling me this radio station keeps asking people if they know a Phyllis from Mulga. Is that you? And I said, "Why?" "Because they're looking for you." And I said, "What do they want?" "They want you to call." So I called to see what they wanted, and Bob Lockham answered the phone, my dear friend. And he said, Phyllis, where have you been?" I said, "I've been at home." I said, I've been nowhere. And he says, "We have looked for you forever." And I said, "Don't put me back on there with that guy, because I'm telling you something, I'm going to chew his butt out." Tall. And he said, no, it's just that he wants you to keep calling the show. And so I told him, I said, "Well, there's no problem, but I can't just call and just talk about anything. I have to have a subject." And and a lot of times I rant, and when I do, it's because something has been said, such as the first time I called. Coach Stallings was belittled, and I called in and took up for him, and it's just the way it was. And that relationship was born right then and there, because Paul made sure anything I loved or liked, he stepped on it. And I called in to chew him out.
Well, so how has your relationship with Paul evolved over time?
He's a good friend of mine. I want to tell you, Paul Finebaum is a different person out from under that microphone. People think he's an instigator, and it's his job. It's radio. It's what he does best, and that's his career, and he knows what he's doing, and he does it well. He does it the best, and I just, Paul is my friend. I've been to the Finebaum Christmas parties with the other callers, to the Finebaum golf tournaments, and been invited there. And I've met Paul through those means. I went to Huntsville with him for him to give a speech one day at this club in Huntsville, and it was a luncheon. And somehow Paul got me up on the stage with him, and I'm just standing there like a nut, and he turns around and says something about Coach Stallings, and when he did, I jumped him right there on that stage. And he turned around and he said, "Now, you people say this woman is not real. Why don't you say it now?" I said, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I felt like I'd just been slammed, but he's a good friend of mine. Paul is a good person. He really is, and he is stuck with our friendship all these years, and I with him. Not just me, my husband, and our son. I mean, he's known my son since he was a little boy, the preteen, and it's just been, we have developed this friendship, and I would do anything in the world for Paul because he's my friend, and I believe Paul would do the same for me if I were to ask.
Phyllis, you are a cancer survivor, and you've told me twice. Is that right?
Yes.
What was that like, having to overcome that?
Well, in '96, the fall of '96, I went to the doctor, and they thought I'd had a little bit of pneumonia. They X-rayed me, and they found a spot on, and it turned out to be lung cancer. And so they sent me to the surgeon and set that up. And I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
And so I went to see the surgeon, and he told me he would operate on me in 2 weeks, which turned out to be November the 22nd of 1996. And he removed my upper lobe of my left lung. And so anyway, I fought through that cancer to keep it from coming back. And then in January, they told me they had found a small node right by my voice box, and it looked precancerous. So they did surgery on my neck, on my throat in January after my lung cancer surgery in November. And that is part of what's wrong with my voice. It did affect my voice box. I mean, my voice used to not be so crass and gravelly like this. And so a lot of people wonder about the way I sound, and that had a lot to do with it, which kind of upset me, when I would call shows, because I knew that I didn't sound great. I knew that I didn't sound good, and I was made fun of a lot because of that, but I let it roll off my back. And I just gave it all to the good Lord. He got me through it. That's the only thing I can say, and my husband saw me through it, and my son and my other children, and by the grace of God, I got through it. And then in 2010, my daughter Tina had breast cancer. She'd been suffering for about three and a half years, and she succumbed to it. April 10th. Yeah, in April 2010, and then 6 weeks later, I went to have a mammogram, and they called me within a week and said that they had found cancer. So then I had a double mastectomy in July, And then, of course, chemo followed that. And so it was, I didn't really call Paul's show at that time. I was really, the chemo just kind of had me, blasted, and I didn't really feel up to it. But once I started getting on the path and getting well again, after I felt like I was strong enough to really give an opinion or anything to the show, that's when I started calling back. But I just kind of let go for a while, just to get myself through it. And, of course, I give it all to the good Lord, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Him. And I've always felt like He left me here for a reason. And now my husband has terminal lung cancer, and it's spread all over his body. And I'm so proud, and I'm so thankful that the good Lord has spared me so I can see him through it, because I know what he's going through, and I think that kind of helps. I think that kind of helps when you're trying to help someone to get through it.
Wow. I didn't know about your daughter.
Yes,
I'm really sorry to hear about that.
Thank you so much. I miss her so much. She was my oldest, and she was my firstborn. And it was really heartbreaking having that surgery. I mean, she died in April, then I had the surgery the following July, and that's all I thought about through my chemo days was I grieved. It wasn't just getting through it. It was grief, but I just prayed hard, and the good Lord come through, and He got me through that too. I know someday I'll see her again.
Well, Phyllis, let me ask you a question here. How do you feel, switching subjects, how do you feel about the Alabama fans that maybe look down on other Alabama fans like you who did not actually go to school there?
I think you tend to think when someone is an alum, especially of a college, you tend to think there goes a very intelligent person. But sometimes intelligence is at the front of at the helm for them, but they lack in common sense. And I think common sense should tell them a fan is someone who cheers, who goes out and buys clothing and memorabilia and buys tickets and comes to the game and sits in those stands and freezes and buys what they have at the concession stands and roots their team on. That's what a fan is, not an alum. You can be an alum and a fan, but you can't just be one. And that's the way I look at that. And I think it's very degrading. And I think whoever thinks like that, they've got a problem. They've got a huge problem. I've got people in my family that graduated from Alabama, but I've also got a lot of people in my family that didn't. But you couldn't find bigger Alabama fans in this country than what you'd find with the family members I'm speaking of right now. And they would tell that man right quick, or anyone who said that. You don't call me a fan. You don't call me a fan. Just because you graduated at Alabama, that does not give you any right to say who can be a fan and who can't, because you're out of line. And that's exactly the way I feel about it.
Phyllis, your reaction to Colin Cowherd about a year ago, that seemed to get you on the national stage. Let me ask you, could you and Colin ever be friends?
John, I really don't know. There's people that's told me that Colin's really a nice person, and he's a nice man. I said, well, then why don't he be nice to me? Why has he got to dig into me with insults about Alabama? He knows that's all it would take. I would be kind to him. I would return the kindness. But if he's going to get on any radio program, including his, and run down the University of Alabama, regardless of whether they're winning or they're losing, it doesn't matter. He's got me after him. And the only reason I come up with that word for him was he was basically putting Auburn in the high places that day and saying Bama would never, they would never be where they were before, that Gus Malzahn owns Alabama, and that from here on out it would just be Auburn. Alabama is no good, no count. And all I could think of was him being at Gus Malzahn's office, or maybe out in the cow pasture, and the name cow turd come at me, and I used it in a fit of anger, arguing with him back. And I really shouldn't have done that, but on the other hand, I said what I said, and I stand by what I said. I can't take it back. I can apologize for it, but I don't think I owe him an apology right now. He needs to be on the same graces. He needs to be meet my kindness if he wants me to think anything of him. I don't hate the man because I don't know the man. I just hate his ways and the way he just digs into the University of Alabama, which I feel like is uncalled for. Most of what he says about Alabama is untrue anyway.
Well, I think he might be eating a lot of crow. He's already eating a lot for the Tennessee game because he got that prediction wrong. But
yeah,
I don't see how Auburn's going to beat Alabama the way they're playing right now.
Well, I don't either, but I'm going to tell you something. When Iron Bowl rolls around, you throw out the record books, and that is the truth. I know that's a cliche, but that is the honest-to-God truth. I have seen Auburn beat us when they weren't supposed to score on us. I mean, I have went to bed crying because Auburn has come from behind and beat Bama. And I'm telling you, it was real tears. I mean, it was boo-hoo city. But you get over it and you go, hey, we'll get them next year. And then next year rolls around, and what do you do? You get Canal, you get Cowturd, you get people like that coming at you. And then you feel like you got to fight everybody else. So what was just a Auburn and Alabama argument or fight is turned into the entire nation, because Florida State, I do not like Jameis Winston. I feel like he's above the law. The Tallahassee police department, they have swept that under the rug. They're continually to sweep anything under the rug. And the way I feel about that, I'll tell you right now, the way I feel about it, I feel like Jimbo Fisher has sold his soul. He has no morals whatsoever. He and Jameis Winston have sold their soul for that Heisman Trophy and that National Championship Trophy. And they're going to do it again this year, they think. But they don't have any idea. They think they're going to do it, but no, Bama's coming for them this time. And this time it'll be a college of character, a college who make sure their young men are in line and who are being decent. I know we've had some problems with our players, but nothing like Jameis Winston has put on the table at Florida State. I feel sorry for the team that has nothing to do with this. I feel sorry for the fans. Except there's some fans that feel like he should get away with anything he wants because he is Jameis Winston. No, he's not. He thinks of himself as some form of a god, and that irks me.
Yeah. Don't
like him. Don't think I could ever like him. He walks with a shrug. He's got a smug grin on his face. I'd love to slap it off.
Phyllis, let me ask you this. What do you want people to know about you that they might not already know?
I want them to know that I have a heart, and I can be hurt, as crass and as ugly as I get sometimes, and I scream sometimes to get my point across. I want them to know it's not personal. I'm not shouting it to any one person or one group of persons, except for the committee now, that group of persons. But I just want them to know that if they want a friend, they got a friend in me. I'm very personable. I love people. I love to be in groups of people. I love my friends. I'm loyal. I'm a loyal friend, and the more the merrier. And I just want them to know that I'm not trying to be anybody that I'm not. and I will never, never, ever do that. I will always be right here in this house, whatever the good Lord wants me to do, and I just want them to know I have a heart, and I'm not mean and crass like so many people has called me. I'm not really mean.
Well, and you know what, Phyllis? That's why I wanted to get you on this show, because I felt like after listening to certain calls on Finebaum, I could tell that you're not necessarily the person that people around the nation might perceive you to be. But
that's true. That's true, and but the words they call me and inbred and all of that, and that's what upsets me. That's what irks me the most, and
yeah.
They talk like Alabama and these few southern states that surround us. We're the racist. Hey, they're some of the biggest racists I've ever seen living in up north. So, they have no right to say stuff like that about and just pinpoint Alabama and the citizens who lives in Alabama. Give people here in this state give them a chance. They're good people in this state. They're not the racist, cornbread, no teeth, tobacco-chewing people that they're called. They're good, decent people. And unless you know them, keep your mouth shut when it comes to insults like that, because you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Phyllis, that's great stuff. I have one more question for you. Now,
sure.
Alabama plays Western Carolina next week. Is that right?
I think so.
Okay, but you know what? Here's the thing, Phyllis. Nobody cares about that game because 2 weeks from now, Alabama plays Auburn. What do you think Alabama's going to do to Auburn in T-Town?
I think at least my gut tells me Bama will win, but I'm not sure Bama will win promisingly. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Nothing close to a blowout. I think it's going to be a close game, and I think it's going to be scarier than the LSU game was last weekend and the Mississippi State game was last night. I think it's going to be a nail-biter and a knockdown drag-out because Auburn has nothing to lose. And when a team comes onto the field and they have nothing to lose, that's when you got to be careful, because they will bite, they will scramble, they will claw, they'll do whatever it takes to beat the number one team in the nation if Alabama is at number one when the game happens.
Well, Phyllis, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a real
You're
pleasure
so
having
welcome.
you on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Just got out of an interview with Phyllis from Mulga.
We're live at Moe's Original Barbecue at the Vestavia Hills location. Moe's Original Barbecue, Southern Soul Food Revival. For the holidays, don't forget to order your turkeys, all the trimmings, stuff your mama would be proud that you brought home. They've got, again, 4 convenient locations: Vestavia, Hoover, Lakeview, and now Trussville. Moe's Original Barbecue, a Southern Soul Food Revival.
That was one of the more interesting interviews I've had, and I wanted to give people a chance to see another side of Phyllis that they don't hear on the radio. And a lot of people don't know, and if you listen to Finebaum's show enough, you'll know that she has helped out a lot of people. She was very involved in helping clean up and rebuild parts of Birmingham and Tuscaloosa when the tornadoes hit. And, the story is that Paul went to actually go visit her while she was doing the cleanup, and she said, "Hey, Paul, I don't have time to talk, but thanks for coming by." And he mentions that in his book. But anyway, it shows how generous of a person she is and how giving of a person. She's a very loyal human being, and she'll stick up for anybody. As you can tell, she loves Alabama football, and she's going to stick up for them. And she's been through a lot in the past 4 years. She has dealt with cancer all throughout her family. She has dealt with it herself twice, as you heard in the interview. She lost her daughter to it about 3 years ago, and now her husband is dealing with it, and she is taking care of him every day at home. And so hopefully people will get a sense of the real Phyllis. And I'll tell you what, she's already a friend of mine, and I really appreciate her being willing to come on and share her story with us. Now let's go to our SEC predictions of the week. I'm going 32-6 Florida over Eastern Kentucky. I'm going to take Georgia at home 51-9 over Charleston Southern. South Carolina plays South Alabama at home. I'm taking South Carolina 38-17. Ole Miss goes to Arkansas in the game of the week. I'm predicting Ole Miss to beat Arkansas. Ole Miss has a week off. Arkansas, they're going to be a little high after the LSU win. Alabama plays Western Carolina at home. Alabama wins 58-3. Auburn plays Samford at home. 56-10 Auburn. Tennessee hosts Missouri. I predict Tennessee will get their 6th win of the year, and they will be bowl eligible before they play Vanderbilt. I'm taking Tennessee 35-24 over the Missouri Tigers. Mississippi State hosts Vanderbilt. I'm taking Mississippi State 45-10. And those are our SEC predictions of the week. That's all the time we have. Thank you all for joining us. We will be at Moe's Original Barbecue next week, 9:30 Monday night. Come by and see us. Have a good evening.